couple of other observations. In today's multinational, internet-based business environment, we can receive sales orders in a variety of ways. This is really important. And again, one of these seemingly common sense items that companies sometimes miss, especially companies who had operated in the pre-e-commerce business world, business to business, lot of human contact, the old school way of conducting sales and such, who now have to undertake e-commerce capabilities, what's referred to as omni-channel, multiple and different ways in which a customer can engage us and buy from us. So to consider what those environments are and what the requirements are in each of those order management scenarios and the process map associated with each one of them, vital to a company's success. So think about some of the old school ways, and it still goes on depending on business relationships and industries, something as simple as a phone call. And phone calls have a tendency, when a customer is placing an order, that the salesperson's on the run and they jot it down on a piece of scratch paper and never get it submitted or forget about it and submit it 3 days later. These are arcane examples that can really actually blow up relationships. Companies still, and individuals still, use spreadsheets by fax to place orders. I personally can't understand why in today's business world why that would happen, but if customers are willing to buy and they prefer to use a fax spreadsheet, we have to be able to accommodate that. Traditional purchase order, written and sent via email as an attached file. I know companies that handle orders via email in the thousands, and it's cumbersome and manual, but that's the world that they live in, that they choose to live in, and they have to be able to deal with that. I've also seen scenarios in the real business world where orders are managed via Google Docs, basically cloud-based service where pre-designated parties can have simultaneous access to information, where an order form could be set up in an Excel spreadsheet and orders are shared between buyers and sellers via Google Docs. I know of customers that do this that are dealing with thousands of orders a year. This isn't the onesie-twosie scenario. Google Docs, while just one example, there are others like it. We're certainly not here to promote Google Docs. While administratively cumbersome, very manual, seen it work in a multinational environment. Moving along in the technology continuum, a systems-generated PO sent electronically is very, very commonplace and preferable from an administrative and tactical perspective. Maybe comes in as an email attachment, cloud-based application as we see for business to business, a B2B environment, or a cloud-based application for B2C. But to be out there and electronically be able to generate, customers to generate orders, purchase orders on us, and our ability as the seller to acknowledge order receipts and execute on those orders electronically via the cloud is a very clear direction that the technology is moving. As you can see, there are many ways to receive orders from customers. So one of our first steps in the order management process is to identify the multiple ways in which clients can communicate with us. And from there, to develop process maps, flow charts, etc., that identify players, steps in the process, who the owners of each step are, etc. Illustrative of the points around process design now in the context of order management. So we're going to have a quick look at a sales order process flow chart. And as we've always said, we want to be clear about what our title to our flow chart is, so we know the scope of the flow chart right away. So we're looking at a sales order process flow chart specific to a build-to-stock B2B model. That means that our organization, as the seller, we work off of a forecast. We're building product and we're putting it into inventory, stocking it in inventory, and waiting for orders to come along. And we're selling from our business to another business. This isn't a B2C situation as we saw in our previous example. So built to stock B2B model. To summarize some of our steps in any process flow, we want to be using the right symbology, ovals for a beginning and end, rectangles for each step. Try to keep the pros short and sweet in those steps. Always want to be looking for, in our design phase, decision points, which are denoted by the diamond. Start upper left, flow down, and if the process continues, go to the right, upper right, and then down again. So just some housekeeping elements of any type of process design that we want to drive home as we go through all of our modules. So let's run through this. So our beginning, the buyer system, that's our customer. We are the seller here. It's our order management system that we're operating. So our customer overseas, maybe they're in India, generates a multi-product purchase order. That's a purchase order, as the name would indicate, that they're buying maybe 100 different products, 100 different SKUs from us. So as the seller's system generates, I should say the buyer's system generates a multi-product purchase order, it's going to get sent electronically, let's go with that method of communication, to the seller. That's us. So the person who's responsible for this particular client is going to receive the order and acknowledge receipt of the PO. So there's a human element associated with this, albeit via email probably, but we want to have an acknowledgement of the PO. One of the first things that we're going to do, perhaps, is look into our DRP system and look out into the future for when this customer wants the order and look at what our projected on hand is going to be. This is a good application of those DRP tools that we've been so attentive to in this module. Simple question, are the goods available? The system is going to tell us that, and hopefully the system inventory quantity is aligned with the actual inventory. So if the answer is yes for all the goods available for this multi-product purchase order, we're going to continue with our process. Well, if the goods aren't available, we might have to get into a back order scenario, communicate with the customer, let them know when delivery would take place, how much of an order we can fill now. There's some communication going on here. Now, oftentimes, a decision point will require some human intervention. Not always, but at least some additional communication going on, especially if the answer, in this case, is in the negative. So we're going to assume that our goods are available, our DRP system is working well, and our projected on-hands out into the future are going well. So moving to the upper right, our system, our seller's system, is going to generate a pick list. That's for a warehouse and distribution environment, bearing in mind that we as the seller perhaps operate our own warehouse network, or we have a third-party logistics company that does that for us. In either case, we're going to have to be able to electronically communicate and generate this pick list. And it's generated in the warehouse where the goods are housed, and the warehouse personnel go out, and as this name would also indicate, go out and pick the merchandise. So off we go, out into the warehouse, pick and pack the order. Now, we thought we were going to have the goods available. We made a commitment to the client in the affirmative, but we also reach a decision point over here where we have to determine that the order is complete. Are all the items there in the quantities that the customer wanted? If we go with yes, we move from there. If no, perhaps some more communication, but worst case scenario, wait to complete the order. If the customer overseas in India, for example, is willing to do that, and how long it will take to actually do that. Assuming we're in the affirmative, we have to generate the documentation and ship the goods. And the document component becomes as important as the physical cargo itself. Commercial documentation, like a commercial invoice, a packing list, which will ultimately be matched up to a transport document, perhaps an ocean bill of lading or an airway bill. So we see here the generation of documents, equally important in this environment as we saw in the previous module when we looked at MRP. So as this flow goes, we have our clear beginning and end, a good title to our process. We might need processes for every way. Well, not might. We will need processes for every way we might receive and deal with orders from clients. Those spreadsheets via email, phone calls. Maybe it's a B2C instead of a B2B scenario. The point being that we need to map out the process, good beginning, good end, scope control, proper symbology, all of those things. So we're starting to form some good disciplines, some good practices around flowcharts in general as we bring the story to specific components of our supply chain activity.